Ms. Widmer, who taught English at Foster Academy, always said that the best way to begin a story is to start with the first important or exciting incident and then fill in the background. So I'm going to start with the rainy Sunday last November when I met Annie Kenyon. I've wanted to be an architect since long before I could spell the word, so I've always spent a lot of time at museums. That day, to help focus my ideas for the solar house I was designing for my senior project, I went to the Metropolitan Museum of Art to visit the Temple of Dendor and the American Wing. The museum was so full of people, I decided to start with the American Wing because it's sometimes less crowded, especially up on the third floor where I wanted to go. And at first it seemed as if that was going to be true. When I got to the top of the stairs, everything was so quiet that I thought there might even be no one there at all. But as I started walking toward the colonial rooms, I heard someone singing. I remember I stood and listened for a minute, and then went toward the sound mostly out of curiosity, but also because whoever it was had a wonderful voice. There was a girl about my age, 17, sitting at a window in one of the oldest colonial rooms, singing and gazing outside. Even though I knew that the only thing outside that window was a painted backdrop, there was something about the girl, the gray cape she was wearing and the song she was singing, that made it easy to imagine Plymouth Plantation or Massachusetts Bay Colony outside instead. The girl looked as if she could have been a young colonial woman, and her song seemed sad. At least the feeling behind it did. I didn't pay much attention to the words. After a moment or two, the girl stopped singing, although she still kept looking out the window. "Don't stop," I heard myself saying. "Please." The girl jumped as if my voice had frightened her, and she turned around. She had very long black hair and a round face with a small little kid's nose and a sad-looking mouth, but it was her eyes I noticed most. They were as black as her hair, and they looked as if there was more behind them than another person could possibly ever know. "Oh," she said, putting her hand to her throat. It was a surprisingly long, slender hand in contrast to the roundness of her face. "You startled me. I didn't know anyone was there." She pulled her cape more closely around her. "It was beautiful, the singing," I said quickly, before I could feel self-conscious. I smiled at her. She smiled back, tentatively, as if she were still getting over being startled. I don't know what that song was, but it sounded just like something someone would have sung in this room. The girl's smile deepened, and her eyes sparkled for just a second. "Oh, do you really think so?" she said. "It wasn't a real song. I was just making it up as I went along. I was pretending that I was a colonial girl who missed England. You know, her best friend, things like that. And her dog. She'd been allowed to take her cat, but not her dog." She laughed. "I think the dog's name was something terribly original, like Spot." I laughed, too, and then I couldn't think of anything more to say. The girl walked to the door as if she were going to leave, so I quickly said, "Do you come here often?" Immediately I felt myself cringe at how dumb it sounded. She didn't seem to think it was dumb. She shook her head as if it were a serious question and said, "No, I have to spend a lot of time practicing, only that gets dull sometimes." She tossed her hair back over the shoulder of her cape. The cape fell open a little, and I could see that under it she was wearing a very uncolonial pair of green corduroy jeans and a brown sweater. "Practicing?" I asked. "Singing, you mean?" She nodded and said in an offhand way, "I'm in this special group at school. We keep having to give recitals. Do you come here often?" She was standing fairly close to me now, leaning against the door frame, her head tipped a little to one side. I told her that I did, and explained about wanting to be an architect and about the solar house. When I said I was going to the Temple of Dendor, she said she'd never seen it, except from outside the museum, and asked, "Mind if I come?" I was surprised to find that I didn't. I usually like to be by myself in museums, especially when I'm working on something. "No," I said. "Okay, no, I don't mind." We walked all the way downstairs, me feeling kind of awkward, before I had the sense to say, "What's your name?" "Annie Kenyon," she said. What's that?"